I never imagined I would have to make such a heartbreaking choice. 2 years ago, I thought I had found happiness again with Stephanie after losing my first wife. We built what I believed was a loving, blended family with my son Jake and her daughter Chloe. But beneath the surface of our seemingly perfect life, something sinister was brewing. They were plotting to remove my son from our family, thinking I would never find out. Before I tell you how I discovered their betrayal, let me know where you are watching from. Hit that like button and subscribe if you have ever had to choose between your child and your relationship. Family comes first, but at what cost? Life dealt me a tough hand when my first wife Sarah passed away from cancer 3 years ago. At 35, I suddenly found myself a single father to Jake, who was only 5 at the time. We lived in a cozy 3-bedroom house in a quiet suburban neighborhood outside Atlanta. The walls held countless memories of our life with Sarah, from the height marks on the kitchen doorframe to the family photos that lined our hallway. After Sarah died, Jake became my world. We developed routines that helped us navigate our grief together. Every night we would read stories. Sarah used to love keeping her memory alive while building our own father-son bond. Our weekend trips to the local park became sacred time for us to talk, play, and heal. Jake was a sweet, sensitive boy with his mother's gentle smile and curious nature. My job as a software engineer at a tech startup allowed me to work remotely 3 days a week, which was a blessing. I could drop Jake off at school, attend his activities, and be present in ways many working parents could not. My boss understood my situation and gave me flexibility as long as my projects were completed on time. I made sure never to miss deadlines, often working late into the night after Jake went to bed. I never planned to date again, at least not so soon. But life had other plans. I met Stephanie at a parent-teacher conference at Jake's elementary school. Her daughter Chloe was in the same second-grade class as Jake. Stephanie was a third-grade teacher at the school, with wavy auburn hair and a warm laugh that drew me in immediately. When she offered suggestions to help Jake with his reading, I appreciated her professional insight and genuine concern. Our first coffee meeting to discuss the kids turned into dinner the following week. Stephanie was vibrant, intelligent, and seemed to understand the complexity of my situation as a widower. She spoke candidly about her own divorce 3 years prior, and the challenges of single parenthood. There was something refreshing about her honesty and strength. We began dating properly always, including the children in our initial outings. We took them to the aquarium, had picnics in the park, and went bowling as a foursome. Stephanie seemed genuinely interested in Jake, asking about his interests and patiently teaching him card games. She would bring small gifts for him, science books or toy dinosaurs, showing she paid attention to what he liked. Jake was shy at first, but slowly warmed to her, especially when she helped him with his homework. Chloe was a confident, outgoing 10-year-old with her mother's features, but a completely different personality. She seemed to enjoy having Jake around often, including him in her games, and showing him her collection of rocks and minerals. The kids appeared to get along well, which made everything easier. After 8 months of dating, I proposed to Stephanie at the botanical gardens with both children present. I had carefully prepared them, explaining to Jake that Stephanie would never replace his mom, but would be another person to love and care for him. Chloe seemed excited about having a father figure again. When Stephanie said yes, both kids cheered, and we embraced as what I thought would be our forever family. Our wedding was small but meaningful, held in Stephanie's parents' backyard with just close friends and family. Jake proudly carried the rings while Chloe scattered flower petals. Everyone commented on what a beautiful family we made and how lucky the children were to have found stability again. I truly believed we were on the path to lasting happiness. We decided to buy a new house together, a fresh start for our blended family. We found a lovely 4-bedroom home in a good school district, with a big backyard for the kids to play in. Moving was bittersweet, especially for Jake, who had never known another home, but we brought special mementos of Sarah with us, including a memory box Jake kept under his bed. The first few months of marriage were a blend of joy and adjustment. Merging 2 households and parenting styles took work, but we seemed to navigate it well. Stephanie set up chore charts and family game nights. We took a short family honeymoon to Disney World, where both kids had a magical time. Life felt good again. But around 6 months into our marriage, I began noticing subtle changes. Jake became quieter at dinner, answering questions with single words instead of his usual animated stories. At first, I attributed it to normal adjustment issues or perhaps preteen mood changes starting early. Then I noticed Stephanie taking Chloe shopping for new school clothes but not including Jake, even though he needed new shoes. When I mentioned it, she casually explained, "Oh, Jake was playing video games and seemed so happy." I did not want to disturb him, but Jake later told me no one had asked if he wanted to go. Family dinners became tense affairs. Stephanie would lavish praise on Chloe for the smallest achievements while barely acknowledging Jake's academic successes. She would make subtle remarks like, "Well, not everyone can be as naturally talented as Chloe," when Jake struggled with his art project. I gently called her attention to this a few times, but she dismissed my concerns, saying I was being oversensitive about my son. I convinced myself this was just part of the blending process. All the parenting books and online forums said blended families take time, sometimes years, to truly gel. I believed patience and love would eventually smooth these wrinkles out. I was determined to make our family work, perhaps blinding myself to the warning signs that were becoming increasingly difficult to ignore. The first major red flag came when Jake's teacher emailed me about his declining performance. His math scores previously. His strongest subject had dropped significantly. During our conference, Mrs. Taylor mentioned Jake seemed constantly tired and had trouble concentrating. "He sits alone at lunch sometimes," she added with concern. "Did something change at home?" That evening I tried to talk with Jake about school. We sat on the edge of his bed as I asked what was troubling him. He shrugged, picking at a loose thread on his blanket. "Everything is fine, Dad," he mumbled unconvincingly. When I pressed gently, he asked, "Do you think Mom would be mad that I have a new mom now?" The question broke my heart. I assured him his mother would want him to be happy and loved, but something about his question nagged at me. I decided to spend more one-on-one time with Jake. We resumed our weekend park visits and started a model airplane project together. During these times, glimpses of my happy, curious son returned, but he would withdraw again once we returned home. Meanwhile, Stephanie's behavior became increasingly concerning. She began avoiding private conversations with me, always finding a reason to be busy or claimed to be too tired to talk. When we did speak, she steered conversations away from Jake or family dynamics. Our intimacy dwindled as she turned away my affection. When I tried to discuss our relationship one night after the kids were asleep, she sighed heavily and said, "I am just stressed with teaching and motherhood. You know how it is." But her coldness seemed specifically directed at moments when Jake and I had bonded, or when I defended him from her criticisms. Stephanie began asserting control over household decisions without consultation. She rearranged the living room, moving family photos that included Sarah to less visible locations. She changed our weekend routines without discussion and planned family events around Chloe's preferences only. When I objected, she accused me of not supporting her role as the mother of the household. The most alarming development came 3 months later when Stephanie suggested sending Jake to live with my parents for the summer. "He could use the male influence of your father," she reasoned. And honestly, Leroy handling both kids is overwhelming. I never realized how much attention Jake requires. I was stunned. "Jake is my son. He stays with us," I said firmly. "I am just thinking about what is best for everyone," she replied, with a tight smile that did not reach her eyes. As tensions grew at home, Chloe's attitude toward Jake deteriorated rapidly. What began as occasional teasing evolved into persistent bullying. She began taking Jake's possessions, claiming they were hers, or that he had said she could borrow them. His favorite action figures disappeared only to be found broken in the trash later. One afternoon, Jake came to me in tears. Chloe had torn the handmade birthday card he had created for Sarah years ago, a precious keepsake he stored in his memory box. When confronted, Chloe claimed it was an accident, but her smirk told a different story. "It is just a piece of paper," Stephanie said dismissively. "Jake needs to learn to let go of the past." I was furious. That card is important to him. Chloe needs to apologize and understand boundaries. Stephanie pulled Chloe protectively to her side. She said it was an accident. "Stop making such a big deal about everything Jake does or says. Chloe is trying to adjust too, you know." At school, Jake became increasingly isolated. I discovered Chloe had been telling classmates that Jake wet the bed and cried about his dead mother every night. Cruel lies that made him a target for ridicule. When I brought this up with Stephanie, she accused Jake of being too sensitive and suggested he needed therapy to toughen up. The turning point came on a rainy Tuesday evening. I arrived home early from work and overheard Stephanie and Chloe talking in the kitchen. I paused in the hallway, not intending to eavesdrop until I heard Jake's name. "I found several boarding schools within driving distance," Stephanie was saying. "The Westmore Academy looks promising and has openings for the fall semester. We can tell Leroy it is for Jake's own good that he needs the structure." "Will Daddy really send Jake away?" Chloe asked, excitement evident in her voice. "It will take some convincing," Stephanie replied. "But in a few months we will have a real family, just the three of us. No more competing with memories or dealing with his emotional baggage." Chloe's next words froze my blood. "I hate Jake. Why cannot he just disappear?" Instead of correcting this horrible statement, Stephanie laughed softly. "Be patient, sweetie. Soon this will be our home completely." I backed away silently, my mind reeling. Later that night, after everyone was asleep, I searched Stephanie's desk and found brochures for boarding schools with notes in her handwriting about admission requirements. She had even initiated email correspondence with admissions officers, using my name in some of the inquiries. The next day, I confronted Stephanie while the kids were at school. "We need to talk about Jake," I began carefully. Her posture immediately stiffened. "What has he done now?" "Nothing. But I am concerned about how he is being treated in this house." Stephanie's expression hardened. "What are you implying?" "That I am mistreating your son. I have bent over backward trying to make him feel included, but he resists every effort." "That is not true," I countered. "Jake has tried to connect with you, but you and Chloe consistently shut him out. You are imagining problems because you cannot let go of your perfect first family," she snapped. "Jake is withdrawn because he refuses to accept me as his mother." "He has a mother," I said quietly. "He just cannot hug her anymore." Stephanie's eyes flashed with anger. "Well, I am here now, and things need to change. This house has to work for all of us, not just revolve around Jake's feelings." The argument escalated until Stephanie delivered her ultimatum. "You need to decide what kind of future you want, Leroy. Are you going to live in the past, or move forward with your new family?" The underlying message was clear. Choose between my son and my new marriage. The woman I thought I knew was asking me to abandon my child for her comfort. I ended the conversation without resolution, needing time to process the betrayal and determine my next steps. The breaking point came on Jake's 9th birthday. I had planned a small celebration with a few of his school friends, complete with his favorite chocolate cake and a science-themed party. 2 days before Stephanie announced that she and Chloe would be visiting her parents that weekend. "You know it is Jake's birthday," I said, stunned by her timing. She shrugged. "My mother has been asking us to visit for weeks. This was the only weekend that worked with my schedule." "Can you not go the following weekend instead?" I asked. "That does not work for my parents," she replied dismissively. "Jake will have many more birthdays. He will be fine." I knew then this was deliberate. Stephanie and Chloe left Friday afternoon without even wishing Jake a happy birthday. Their absence cast a shadow over what should have been a joyful day. Though Jake tried to enjoy his party with the few friends who came, I could see the hurt in his eyes when other kids asked where his stepmom and stepsister were. That night, after everyone had gone home, I found Jake sitting alone in the backyard, staring at the stars. When I sat beside him, he leaned against my shoulder and finally broke down. "Dad, does Mom Stephanie hate me?" he asked through tears. "Why would you think that, buddy? She always looks mad when I talk. She throws away my drawings when you are not looking. She tells me I should not talk about Mom because it makes you sad." He hesitated before adding the most heartbreaking revelation. "Last week I heard her tell Chloe that soon I would be gone and they would be happier." I held my son as he sobbed, my own tears falling into his hair. "I know Mom Stephanie wants me to go away," he whispered. "Am I going to have to leave our family?" My decision crystallized in that moment. No relationship was worth my child's happiness and security. The next morning, while Jake was playing at a friend's house, I began searching through Stephanie's things, no longer concerned about privacy. In her bedside drawer, I found her journal, and what I read confirmed my worst fears. Leroy continues to put Jake first in everything one entry read. He does not see how this affects Chloe or me. I cannot be a mother to a child who constantly reminds everyone of his dead mother. The boarding school plan is our best option. Once Jake is gone, I can finally sell this house and move us somewhere fresh, somewhere without ghosts. I found text conversations with her friends, where she complained about being stuck with a package deal and how she only wanted Leroy, not the emotional baggage of his son. In messages to her mother, she detailed plans to gradually distance me from Jake, making the eventual separation easier. Most disturbing was the discovery that Stephanie had withdrawn $5,000 from our joint savings account as a deposit for Westmore Academy, the boarding school she had selected for Jake. This had been done without any discussion, using money we had been saving for family vacations. My phone rang with a call from an unfamiliar number. It was Adam, one of my oldest friends, who had distanced himself after my remarriage. "Leroy, we need to talk," he said gravely. "I should have said something sooner, but Stephanie told everyone you wanted to start fresh without reminders of your past." Adam revealed that Stephanie had been systematically alienating me from friends who had known Sarah, claiming I found their presence painful. She had told several mutual friends that I was looking into residential options for Jake because he had developed behavioral problems after Sarah's death. None of us believed it completely, Adam admitted. But she was convincing, saying you were too proud to ask for help or admit there were issues. More calls followed. My sister confessed that Stephanie had discouraged family visits, claiming Jake became unmanageable around extended family. Sarah's parents, who had remained close after her death, shared that Stephanie had limited their video calls with Jake, telling them it was on my orders because Jake got too emotional afterward. A pattern emerged of calculated isolation. Stephanie had been creating a narrative where sending Jake away seemed like a reasonable solution to fictitious problems. She had been laying groundwork within our social circle to support her plan while preventing anyone who truly knew Jake from witnessing what was happening. That evening, I took Jake to dinner at his favorite restaurant and promised him, "No one will ever send you away. You and I are a team forever, buddy." The relief in his eyes was both heartwarming and heartbreaking. 2 days later, Stephanie and Chloe returned from their trip. As Chloe rushed upstairs to unpack, I asked Stephanie to join me in the living room. On the coffee table, I had placed the boarding school brochure's bank statements showing the withdrawal printed email exchanges with the school and her journal open to the most damning entries. Her face drained of color. "You went through my private things. How dare you? How dare I? You were planning to send my son away behind my back. You have been systematically trying to erase him from our family. You are overreacting," she attempted, but her voice lacked conviction as she stared at the evidence before her. "I want the truth, Stephanie. All of it. Now." Perhaps realizing denial was futile, Stephanie's demeanor changed completely. "Fine. You want the truth. I never signed up to be a replacement mother to a child who cries over every little reminder of his real mom. Do you know how hard it is to live in the shadow of Saint Sarah? How impossible it is to compete with a ghost? This was never a competition," I said quietly. "Everything about this marriage has been a competition," she snapped. "Your perfect first wife, your precious son, your beautiful memories. There was never really room for Chloe and me. We were just filling space in your life. That is not true. I loved you. I wanted to build a life with you, with both of our children." Stephanie laughed bitterly. "Jake was never going to accept me. He compares me to his mother every day in his head. I see it in his eyes. He is a child who lost his mother. Of course, he still grieves her. Well, I cannot be the stand-in mother anymore. I deserve a husband who puts me first, not one who drops everything whenever his son sniffles." Chloe had come downstairs during our conversation and now stood beside her mother. "This is supposed to be our house too," she said with a glare. "But everything is always about Jake and his dead mom." Stephanie placed a protective arm around her daughter. "See what this environment is doing to Chloe. She deserves better than being second best in her own home." I looked between them, seeing clearly for the first time the united front they presented against my son. "You are right about one thing," I said calmly. "This environment is toxic, but not for the reasons you think." "What is that supposed to mean?" Stephanie demanded. "It means I am done. I want you both out of this house within 48 hours. Stephanie stared in disbelief. "You cannot be serious." "I have never been more serious about anything in my life. You plotted to send my 9-year-old son away so you could have me to yourself. You manipulated, lied, and isolated us from people who care about us. There is no coming back from that. You would throw away our marriage just like that, over a misunderstanding. This was not a misunderstanding. It was a betrayal of everything I thought we stood for as a family. I pointed to the documents on the table. You can explain to a judge why you thought it appropriate to withdraw money from our joint account to pay for a boarding school without my knowledge or consent. Stephanie's expression hardened. You will regret this, Leroy. No woman will want to take on a man permanently attached to his dead wife's memory and her clingy son. I would rather be alone forever than spend another day with someone who could treat an innocent child with such cruelty. Stephanie stormed upstairs with Chloe in tow. I immediately called my lawyer to begin divorce proceedings and contacted a locksmith to change the locks after they left. I transferred remaining joint funds to a new account, leaving Stephanie's personal money untouched. I documented everything, knowing this would likely get messy. The next 2 days were tense but necessary. Stephanie and Chloe packed their belongings while I ensured Jake was safe at my sister's house. When they finally loaded the last box into Stephanie's car, she made one last attempt. You know this is not what you really want, she said. We can work through this. Family therapy, perhaps. I shook my head. What I want is a peaceful life for my son, free from people who see him as an inconvenience. That cannot include you anymore. As they drove away, I felt a complex mixture of grief, relief, and resolve. I had lost a wife, but saved my son from years of emotional abuse. Some prices are too high to pay, even for the illusion of a complete family. The aftermath was difficult in ways I had not fully anticipated. Though I had protected our assets legally, the divorce proceedings drained my savings and emotional reserves. Stephanie fought for alimony and a portion of the house value, dragging the process out for months. Her public story painted me as an unstable widower, unable to move on, who had abruptly thrown her and her daughter out for no valid reason. Some mutual friends took her side, believing I had overreacted to normal blended family struggles. Text messages arrived questioning my decision, suggesting I had devastated 2 lives based on paranoia. Even my mother initially urged reconciliation, worried about the stability Jake needed. Jake struggled with guilt, believing he had caused the breakup. If I had been better, maybe she would have liked me, he said one night as I tucked him in. I had to repeatedly reassure him that Stephanie's actions reflected her character flaws, not his worthiness of love. Nights were the hardest. After putting Jake to bed, I would sit alone questioning myself. Had I tried hard enough? Could we have worked through this with intensive therapy? In my darkest moments, I wondered if Stephanie was right, if my attachment to Sarah's memory had doomed any new relationship. But then I would remember Jake's tears on his birthday, the cruelty of destroying his mother's card, the secretive boarding school plans. My resolve would strengthen knowing I had made the only choice a father could make. The turning point in our healing came when Jake's pediatrician recommended a child psychologist specializing in grief and family trauma. Dr. Rivera created a safe space for Jake to express his confusion and pain. After several sessions, she invited me to join, guiding us through conversations Jake had been afraid to initiate. I thought if I talked about Mom, you would be sad, Jake confessed. And Mom, Stephanie said it was selfish to keep bringing her up. You can always talk about your mom, I assured him. She will always be part of us. With Dr. Rivera's help, we established new family traditions that honored Sarah's memory while creating fresh experiences for just the 2 of us. We started a memory journal where Jake could write letters to Sarah about his life, sharing his accomplishments and worries with her in his own way. Gradually, our home felt like a sanctuary again. We redecorated Jake's room with a space theme he had always wanted. We resumed Friday movie nights with popcorn battles and silly commentary. Jake began inviting friends over without the tension that had previously filled our home. 6 months after the separation, I received an unexpected promotion at work. The additional income eased our financial strain from the divorce, and the new role allowed me to continue working remotely 3 days a week. My team leader praised my dedication and focus during personal difficulties, unaware how meaningful that recognition was for me. The most profound change came in Jake himself. His grades improved dramatically. His teacher noted he was more engaged and confident in class. He joined the science club and made new friends who shared his interests. The quiet, withdrawn boy who had been shrinking under Stephanie's criticism blossomed in her absence. Our support network rebuilt itself organically. Sarah's parents became regular visitors again, bringing laughter and stories that kept her memory alive for Jake. My sister scheduled monthly sleepovers for Jake with his cousins. Adam and other friends I had lost touch with reintegrated into our lives, apologizing for believing Stephanie's manipulations. The final divorce hearing came almost a year after the separation. Stephanie made a last attempt at claiming partial custody of Jake, arguing she had been his stepmother and deserved visitation rights. Her claims fell apart when Jake's therapist submitted a professional assessment documenting the emotional harm Stephanie's behavior had caused. The judge denied her request, citing the deliberate and calculated efforts to remove the child from his home and separate him from his father. As we drove home from the courthouse, Jake asked thoughtfully, "Dad, will you ever get married again?" "I do not know, buddy," I answered honestly. "If the right person comes along someday, maybe. But they would need to love both of us as a package deal." He nodded, seemingly satisfied. "I think Mom would want you to be happy. She would want both of us to be happy." I corrected gently, "And we are getting there right." His smile was answer enough. Today, 2 years after that fateful birthday that changed everything, Jake and I have found our rhythm. At 11, he is thriving in middle school, passionate about astronomy and robotics. I have learned to balance work, parenthood, and occasional social outings with friends who understand our journey. I remain open to the possibility of love again, but with clearer boundaries and higher standards. Any woman who enters our lives must understand that Jake and I are inseparable, that his well-being will always be my priority, and that Sarah remains an important part of our story, not a threat to be eliminated. The most valuable lesson from this painful chapter was realizing that family is defined not by conventional structures, but by unconditional love and respect. Stephanie wanted the appearance of a perfect family while secretly undermining its foundation. What Jake and I have may look incomplete to some, but it is built on something stronger than appearances. Sometimes loving your child means making difficult choices that others might not understand. Sometimes being a good parent means standing alone against pressure to compromise your child's emotional safety. And sometimes walking away from a toxic relationship is not a failure, but the bravest form of success. I lost a wife, but saved my son. In doing so, I also saved myself from living a lie and modeling the wrong kind of love for Jake. That is a trade I would make again, without hesitation. Have you ever had to make a difficult choice to protect someone you love? Would you have done anything differently in my situation? Share your thoughts in the comments below. If this story resonated with you, please like, subscribe, and share it with someone who might need to hear that standing up for your children is always the right choice, even when it breaks your heart. Thank you for listening. And remember, true family never asks you to sacrifice one loved one for another.